Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment in our Tips and Tricks Golf Blitz series. Today, we will be continuing through our standard progression. We've made it back through the ones that we had to backtrack a little bit to see. And that brings us to a course that feels kind of out of place initially, but it actually is one of the more interesting courses in the game. That is Tour 12 Football. And like I said, it feels weird to be playing golf when it's all football themed, but I do honestly feel like this map was done very well. So let's take a closer look at some of the holes on this tour and what you need to know in order to excel and do better at them. But before we get started, make sure you check to see if you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, go ahead and fix that for me real quick. And don't forget to subscribe for that daily variety content. Without further ado, let's play ball. Football, specifically. So this first hole that we'll be having a look at is a very interesting one. And basically, you're going to need to go through this portal. Ideally, if you can go through it in a way where you cannot end up sticking to the putty on these goalposts is ideal. And then you'll need to make your way down to this lower portion. Again, if you can avoid that little gravity field up at the top there, you can make your way down to the bottom in a lot fewer shots. Now, one of the things that will really help there is if you can get through those standards before your opponents do, they're more likely to jostle around and knock you further down to the point where you can just take that follow-up shot at the end. So, some real benefits there. Now, this hole is very interesting because there's a couple of different strategies that one can employ. I personally recommend trying to take a lower angle here because most of your opponents are going to be competing for the higher areas on this wall. And then you'll just want to take a chip over onto this block. Now there's a couple of different methods that you can use here. If you have a high velocity ball such as the Super Ball or other things, you can actually take a shot vertically up through these standards. Or if you have a shield ball or an anti-grab ball, you can come around and basically complete the exact same effect. From here, it's just a matter of going up these goalpost standards and the gooey bits that are there, or if you do have enough of your anti-grav left over, if that's one of the power-ups you happen to have, you can then take that straight up to the top as well for a nice easy follow-up. You've got to be a little bit cautious with your angles, but it is very doable. This hole is another one that can be kind of fun and kind of stressful. Now, ideally, you're going to want to take a shot that lets you roll gently onto the end of this platform. If you have opponents with grenades, then that can kind of mess with this a little bit. But from here, you're just going to want to take a shot off the back end. If you can hit onto that corner and kind of roll forward into the hole, that's ideal. But you're going to have much better chances in finishing this hole in fewer strokes if you can take that shot from the goal standard there as opposed to rolling down to the bottom platform. Still doable, but you're a little bit better favored if you are from up higher. This hole can be a little bit tricky, but there's a couple of things that you can do. Now, the intended path is to chip over here onto this block and then come down below to this block that's a little bit further down. But if you play your cards right, you can actually just bank off of that ball and get a nice easy follow-up down into the small putting green area, if not just finish things off entirely there. So you might have to invest in some higher power stats or power-ups that you've invested more power into, but that is a really good method you can use to give yourself an advantage. And then, like I was saying earlier with this version of the hole, it really helps if you have something with increased power. Now, the power ball or the super ball here, as well as the laser, those are both really good options for getting through this section a lot quicker. And if you do happen to have that that super ball, you can actually make your way up to the top again with relative ease. It really just depends on what you have. The biggest three that you want to watch out for when starting that hole are the super ball, the shield ball, and the anti-grab ball, because that can allow you to bypass a otherwise tricky portion of the course. Here's another hole that can be pretty frustrating, but also very fun if you play it right. Now, I recommend taking anything with increased power. Of course, the Super Ball is going to be the best one for that if you're going to look to make your way down onto lower portions of the track. And then there's one of two approaches that you can take here. You can take the riskier route of trying to bank off of this standard and down into the hole, or if you have a more safe, reliable option like that putty or that gooey ball, you can stick to the side of that area to avoid those putting green areas, or just kind of practice until you were confident making those shots through the putting green. But by far, if you can bank off of that corner down into the goalpost area, you're going to have a lot easier time finishing up the hole and taking out your opponents a lot quicker. Here's another one that could be kind of fun. Now, again, the intended method is for you to go through these goalposts. Ideally, they want you to take this shot here and then over to that actual goalpost there. But what I have found is doable is you can use a couple of your higher power or higher accuracy shots to make your way over to this other pile or this other rotating platform here to really get ahead of the competition there. Many people have figured that strategy out as well, so you're just going to need to make sure that you're confident in landing that shot when and if you decide to go for it, depending on what power-ups you have available. This is a hole that can actually be a little bit tricky, but if you know the strategy that's best to go for, then you're really going to have an easier time with it. I actually have found that the best route to take is down this initial section because it allows you a lot better follow-ups, especially if you have items such as the Super Ball that are going to put you right down here onto the green, if not rolling into the hole. There's just a lot more hassle than what's worth taking the high road down to that bottom section of the course. So the quicker you can get down there, especially if you have items that will give you increased distance, the better off you're going to be. So this is another hole that can be fun and tricky. So if you have, again, a ball that can go further, the fast forward ball wasn't really my best example there, but the Super Ball would have been a really good candidate for getting there. Basically, you're going to want to try and make your way into this bottom basin as quickly as you can, and then just kind of take a shorter follow-up shot onto the green. I hit things a little bit short there, but it's not the end of the world because we did have a relatively quick chip in. But balls that can fly further, or if you have items that have increased levels of power that can make that shot past that initial sand trap, then you're going to be golden. This is what I was talking about earlier with wanting to have something like the Super Ball off the bat. Because again, if you can kind of bypass that initial section, the quicker that you're going to be able to make a follow-up shot. Now, I don't think that there's a huge preference between one or the other. That front area is actually a little bit safer because it has a cradle that can kind of catch your ball, whereas if you go higher, you could either overshoot and end up on the top side of this little measuring standard, or you could just miss altogether. And don't like betting on narrow margins of error when it comes to making technical shots. Here's one of the last ones that I was waiting on. Now, this one can be pretty tricky because there's a lot of unexpected components to it. Now, ideally, if you can take a bounce off that back wall and roll back just enough to the point where you fall down between this standard while it's down, you can get a real leg up on the competition because it allows you to bypass some of the trickier components of the hole. And then from here, there's a couple of different approaches that you can take. The laser's fine. You really just need to make sure that you are getting past that standard one that's laying down as opposed to standing up. And sometimes you can even block your opponents from retaliating against you by getting on the other side of that standard. So fairly straightforward as you're familiar with what the technicalities of that level. That's about everything that I think I wanted to cover from this tour. I've played through it a couple extra times just to make sure that we've hit everything, and I do believe that to be the case. But do you think that there's anything that I missed? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. If there is a correction that needs to be made, I will be more than happy to provide that in the beginning of a future episode. But thanks so much for taking some time to watch today's video. I hope it helped. If it did, be sure to drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for that daily variety content. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.